from the smart factory point of view, firstly, we'll to have to define a clear vision and the business goals, that what are we solving. So for it's like we are looking for a lead time, traceability, sustainability. So af- after that, we have to do the proper assessments, that what is the current maturity. It's about the people, process, technology, or some readiness point of view. And if we identify some of the use cases, so we have to prioritize that. Okay, which use case within the organization that we have to take, and how we are going to build it from the organization point of view. And based on that, next step is to building the architecture, that what is the architecture we are building, how for the connecting, how the data application, what about the cyber security and all. And finally running the pilots and doing the various different standardized and rollouts across all the plants itself. So this is how I personally feel that the manufacturing lies the about this one.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And Mr. Nitin, also we are also like to have your views.
Yeah, I have a very counter ways of thinking, like when we to talk about applying these kind of things, and we start with problem solving. In all of my engineering life and ever in my textbook, I never see a single statement which says that you have to start by problem solving, then only you can solve anything. All our textbooks and all our knowledge which has been built are not for problem solving as a template and then apply and design an architecture and all. It starts with something very basic. So I somehow have my reservation when we think about we'll solve a problem and then find an architect and we find a solution. I don't think manufacturing works like that. We don't solve problems like that. We start with very basic understanding of physics. We understand very basics of what inputs are, how our outputs are, what are qualities and what are the parameters, and then we design equipment on that, and then we build systems on that. So there is a hierarchical system and natures of interlocks which happens, and then only we can do it. Problem solving is a template which has been shoved down from some startup culture in Silicon Valley, which is being saying that if I solve one problem, I solve every problem. So that is something which is not yet been experienced by me, but I'm very readily open to learn whether if that formula works every time.
Yeah, very controversial opinion, sir.
Yeah.
If we move to Mr. Ravi, if you could highlight.
Yeah.
Sir, you're on mute.
Yeah, say that one more time, Vivek. Sorry.
Could you shed some light on the same question, like what Mr. Ravi and Mr. Nitin and Ashwani talk about?
Oh, the smart factory itself, and what's okay. Like we spoke, right? I mean, we'll start from the very basics itself, so let's not even go into that aspect of the modern robotics or any of that. I'm very far away from kind of even thinking along those lines. All that I'm kind of looking at a smart factory is, do I have the visibility of what's happening on the floor? Okay, so that's at the minimum, that there is no second thought on not having that kind of thing implemented at any organization. Having said that, the next part that probably comes is how well is the kind of lack of a better word, the visibility of that data itself. I mean, you are granted that you could even get a visibility by putting a smart camera and kind of observing what is happening, but that doesn't really solve the problem, right? So you need much more intelligence than that one, right? So one would probably even say that you know what? Why? I mean, today's technology, wouldn't it allow you to take that smart camera and kind of digitize whatever is happening, and it translates into your system of records? Can that happen? Yeah, but that's probably the the nirvana state. To go back to the smart factory itself, it's a really kind of very comprehensive question, Vivek, to kind of answer in one or two lines. So it's not something that can happen. You'll have to really break it down into. I mean, some of our previous speakers kind of spoke about it. I'm very clear that you need to break it down. Of course, it starts with the visualization of the data, what you really want, what kind of problem. Of course, you will have access to the data, but what problem are you trying to solve? Is it really meaningful to capture that data or not? I mean, you just can't have tons of data kind of sitting somewhere where it's kind of it's getting stale and you have actually no impact as a result of having that one. So in essence, I would probably go back, and I agree with Ashwin what he said. You would start with the business case of what you want to really achieve, and basis that you start figuring out how do you kind of make your factory environment much smarter than the way it is currently right now. So with that, I'll kind of
Exactly. Then, and I have one follow-up question. Like, what are the drawback of the smart factories? Is there any drawback?
Oh, I wouldn't think so. I would think that any kind of information is definitely going to add a lot of value to it. But the question is it kind of just sitting inside that environment, or you're kind of taking action on top of it? One drawback is to definitely kind of keep accumulating, but absolutely nobody has any idea. So I mean, all machines that are kind of producing your equipment, whatever is the output that is coming out, fantastic. You have access to all that, but I can say that at least 50 to 60% of that is probably not really utilized. I mean, we are very far away from actually making sense of that one. So I would still go back and kind of challenge the notion of what is really useful to capture and only capture that one. Otherwise, you're just kind of making it's no longer a data lake; it's a data swarm. It's not really helpful at all.
Yeah, thank you. Mission, I would like to have your views on the same question. Like, is there any drawback?
I definitely agree with Mr. Ravi that there's no drawback to it. Anyways, connected factories would basically add value. But
Yeah.
the problem is the idea of how you bring the implementation, the trajectory of your project. You must have seen in one of the slides where the study mentions that there's been more than 35% of projects which basically hit stalemate because of no progress happening. So a company or a customer needs to understand how they want to implement a smart factory, starting with connected machineries first, gathering of data being available for analytics, and then it's a step by step process that they need to follow and not jump in entirely to it and then ending up nowhere.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Mr. Nitin, you like to have this?
Sorry, I just want to add one more point that data in the factories has always been optimized as what we collect, because we don't collect everything, we just optimize based on what we want to control. So if we are attempting data model from a control data, we are failing that first step itself, because not every sensor is connected to a historian, right? Not every sensor is manipulated variable or control variable to achieve a control state. Second, and finally, not every sensor is basically an inferential for a data point or data model. So what we are doing if we are attempting to create a data model or a digital twin of an asset or a system using control data, we are mixing the physical response to control response and muddling that up and creating a data model which will not be explaining itself properly. So there is always this kind of a attentive challenge where you have to understand whether you are attempting from something where there is no information, or information is already obscured because of this kind of impact, right? Was it a machine response or was it a control response? How do you differentiate from a single data which is just sensing temperature, right? So this is a real challenge which most of the data science and anything which is related to only data fails to realize.
Yeah. And sir, I have a follow-up question. Like, what steps are being taken to overcome these challenges, like that you mentioned?
So for basically, don't leave the legacy systems and first principle understanding of the asset and operations behind. Find ways to mix that with the data model. So I have simple principles. What is my data model and what is my first principle? If my first principle model is very strong and fully explainable with all the empirical and rational equations, then I don't need data model. Maybe I need data model only to as a augmented and supportive architecture, right? To say, for example, I want to understand only the efficiency of the machine, which I cannot measure, so I will use data model, but rest everything I will create first principle. Second, in a process or a system where there is lot of very less amount of instrumentation, very less amount of sensor, but there is lot of understanding about its what happens if, what happens when kind of thoughts are already known. So I will somehow try to create a supportive simulation model which will augment that and test that theory, and then create data, and then create data model, and then run these two systems parallel. The third is when there is lot of unknowns but good amount of data, but good amount of variability in the data, then I will purely move to data model where first principle will take a backseat. So there is a lot of strategies to overcome such kind of inferior data space or sensor space, or understand what exactly your machine is supposed to do. And if it is doing every time same thing, then you don't need actually a data model. So the challenge is always between certainty and uncertainty, knowns and unknowns.
Yeah, thanks, sir. Thank you, sir, for highlighting the challenge and solution for smart factories. Mr. Ashwini, we'd like to have your views. Like, is there any drawback?
So I somehow agrees with Nitin. Yes, no drawbacks, or sometimes it is maybe, but we'll think again. I'll repeat that same thing. So we'll see that from the starting point of view, the problem solving. Similarly, the data which we are generating within the organization. So how to segregate the data, and second piece is that how to process the data to get the relevant information out of that. So this is just my say on this one.
Yes, sir. And like, I have one more question. Like, how is cybersecurity is being addressed as factories become more connected and data driven? If you could highlight more.
So right now, the data is a lifeblood of any effective organization. So yes, data for building a connected factory, data is an important factor. So whatever the data we are getting out of the equipments or out of the machines, so we have to process and analyze that data, and based on that, the decision makings will be done. Either the decision making is for the production, for the planning, or you can say that from the financials output point of view. So from the connected factories point of view, yes, of course, the data is the important factor being considered for the from the entire ecosystem point of view.
Yeah, Mission, I would like to have your views. Like,
Okay. So I think, oh, was it for me?
yeah, you can answer. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Okay, so as we were speaking, I think all of us were probably very focused on our respective factories and the kind of environment, and we were looking that way. But taking a step back, I was kind of realizing there is the other part of the organizations which are still dependent. There could be, your distribution centers, there could be the head office itself. There are so many other functions. So you can't look at an isolated data smart factory in the context of only factory and the factory personnel and the whatever kind of, gets. It's a much bigger ecosystem. So start looking at it in that angle. You will start seeing the value of data, not just limited to the manufacturing and the floor that is happening there. It is much more like, the supply chain itself, your suppliers that are coming not just in one locale, but, across the whole world. And then, of course, your customers itself, and, whether it's B2B or B2C. So if you start putting all that together, then the smart factory kind of, starts realizing its real full potential, and not just limited to, of course, that's a very important part that only gives you the factory level of smartness, but not really, the business level of smartness that we kind of want. That, I thought was something that occurred to me as we were speaking.
Exactly, sir. Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Nitin, you like to have your views.
Sorry, again, one more point of opinion. Basically, so whenever I see about data and talk about data, I only ask these questions. It actually has to solve existential questions. Okay, what are existential questions of our life? Who we are, what we are, where we are going, what was our purpose? If a data is supposed to be used in any context of data model, it needs to be solved. It needs to be telling itself where exactly it is coming from, what exactly its purpose is, who they are. Every questions of existential crisis which a data should be able to solve. Without that, most of it's just a series of number under timestamp. So without that context built into it, so there is a lot of research which is going on, like UPC, OPC, UA was the initial start, and now it has become unified namespace. But still, the practice of embedding information on the data footprint has not yet gone into. Okay, so that is like a change in technology as well as adoption, as well as change in practice of how data is recorded, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I believe data needs to be handled in that way whenever there is supposed to be model based on it.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And Mr. Nair, we have a question for you. Like, what role does workforce upskilling play in ensuring the successful implementation of smart manufacturing?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. Like, what role does upskilling play in ensuring successful implementation of smart manufacturing? Like
What roles would you play?
workforce upskilling.
Okay. So, yes, this is definitely required at a plant level, because if you consider someone who's been working with legacy systems, um, the legacy systems, when they work in isolation, they basically have no connectivity. So the operators or the engineering people level, they do not have anything that requires a networking or a data exchange or some sort of a protocol implementation like the OPC UA or MQTT. So such kind of protocols are never been used. They have always worked in isolation. And when someone is trying to bring in like correlate all the data and utilize it for building an IoT system, that is when the the requirement of upskilling of these engineers and operators comes into picture. And upskilling is very important, because the implementation of an IoT system is basically dependent on the accessibility and functioning of the basic analytics. So in case if you have an ecosystem which has never which have dealt with many multiple brands and many multiple, there are ecosystems where people are working only with Rockwell, there are ecosystems where people are working only with Siemens. When upskilling comes into picture, they are basically geared up for working with the IoT platforms and utilizing the data properly.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. And yes, sure, sir. We'd like to have this. Just anything.
Guys, again, I am just want to share another story, okay? And it's a tragedy in its own aspect. When the AI hype started, everybody started saying, "Oh, we have to teach our operators everything about AI, how to do things." And technology was getting day by day improved. So every guy in our network of RIL and Geo started learning Python. That was the initial push. Then suddenly things changed, and then they started saying, "Okay, let's learn something more like TensorFlow and the package and the econ." Then the next year the change happens, then they started saying that let's learn the IoT system ecosystem, Azure, Google, and everything else. And then now suddenly that changed to become like, okay, let's go for chat GPT learning, understanding LLMs and application of it. Then finally what happened, everybody is now learning prompt engineering. Now prompt engineering is nothing but your words. So basically what you're learning is language. Okay, so where exactly we start from the same point and came up to the full circle. The other aspect is in industry we have a very silent principle. If you know something half, don't do at all. It is very really enforced in operating world. When you know something very half of it or not completely, don't attempt at all, because it's a safety risk. So even if we put our operators 24 hours to learn everything about AI, code, do all those things, do you think they will be able to create production and ready and safety and reliably capable system? I highly doubt it, and I will not encourage it, because this is not the right way. What I suggest is, rather than that, be conscious of the tooling of the AI or tooling of this such kind of system. Like, what is the application, the way it works, so that you can understand when it's going to be used, how it is going to be used, rather than developing yourself. So, skill upgrade is supposed to be pivoting in the certain manner, and don't chase technology. Technology is not yet improved. The manufacturing sector will be the last to adopt technology.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where every startup is right now coming to manufacturing sectors. Most money is flowing into manufacturing sector, because this is the last. Retail, finance, and everything is done,
Yeah, actually.
right? Sorry again, I I just spoke. I hope it's just an opinion, you guys can take it, right?
Sure, sir. Like Mr. Ashwin, like we like to have a from that.
Yeah.
Oh, myself. Yeah. So, contrary to, so I think the CFO is looking at the digital, and also most of us in that role, to say that how do you actually kind of, make this so-called upskilling not something that we'll have to deal with every day, day in, day out, every quarter basis. What I think is, how does digital in that way help that so-called process so simplified for people on the floor and across the entire organization and including the entire ecosystem, saying that, how is, uh, lack of a better word, the digital backbone or the systems in itself going to make this upskilling not another line item in the CFO's books to kind of, worry about. Having said that, it's not that simple. Obviously, you would expect that some amount of learning, but I would still place it as a cultural thing on that respective individual to kind of, make himself or herself kind of, updated. You're doing it for your own kind of, betterment in contributing back to the organization and to the society. So there's nothing that is kind of, stopping you from going ahead with upskilling yourself, and it's extremely important.
Production systems are habit forming. They are supposed to be habit forming because that's how they produce consistency. Okay.
Sure.
Anything change has to affect that part only. Nothing which adversely affect will be removed. So CFO will be finally worried about the last part, whether my production is actually making as per the standards and I can sell it, right? Anything which is not supposed to be trimmed down. So production system is habit forming. That's why we are so hard to change.
Absolutely. Yep. And
right?
that, yep, agree.
Yeah.
Mr. Bhatia, I would like to have your views.
Yeah, so the last comments from my side, I think so. Okay, technology alone cannot deliver the results. So upskilling is absolutely central. So to give the, you can say that digital literacy for all, starting from the operators to supervisors to engineers. So everyone should understand that what's these dashboards or the digital flows and what's the output or the information they are giving out. Similarly, the specialized skills. So will not give the specialized skills to the every person within the organized, but like the awareness of the cybersecurity and how the automation as well as other industrial networking is beneficial from the industry point of view. So these types of knowledge we should have to deliver within the organization. Similarly, the structured training journey as well as the programs required to be done within the organization to give the awareness about the advanced capabilities available and how to leverage the benefits out of that. Similarly, for the last piece is that for making any change, if we introduce anything like AI or any stuff within the organization, change management is a very difficult stuff. So for the change management C point of view, the information, the knowledge, the upskilling is very important. So that there are fears about the, you can say that operators or the supervisors that if we'll do more automation, so our job will be on risk. So regular upskilling of the team members to address that how the automation is beneficial, then so involving them in the journey of the digitalization, that how digitally we are improving, how the type of automation we are doing within the organization. So at each level, wherever it is required or applicable. So I think so upskilling is very important part of within the organization itself. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Of course, it's a compulsion for. So just last question, like we like to have your closing statement, like everyone, like in just short. We'll begin with you, sir, Mr. Bhatia.
Pardon?
Like, closing statement, like about the smart factories and all, in short.
No, I already mentioned in my PPT itself that connected factories with IoT and edge. So becoming the backbone of the backbone and represents the future of the smarter, safer, greener and the greener manufacturing. So that is the, I think so, the closing statement and the last line from my side. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Mr. Nitin, would like to have this?
I made so many statements. I think those all consolidated can be a closing statement. But yeah, I mean, I sound pessimistic, but I am actually very much hopeful. The reason is unless and until we put some real good guardrails in applying and being enthusiastic about, being not over enthusiastic about rushing it, then we can avoid a lot of mistakes. Because what I feel is there is a certain mix of socioeconomic and socioeconomic factors which are getting built up. Okay, and that is like burning the candle from two ends. Think about it. There was a time when people used to spend considerable amount of their own time to learn all the basics of engineering, all the basic principles of design, all the principles of understanding everything, right? Nowadays people are not investing that much time in the hard engineering principles. I don't see kids worrying about being wrong in their calculation.
Yeah.
We used to get scared when I do a calculation mistake. Uh, then the second thing is the senior leadership is also not getting honored. Most of the either leadership is leaving the sectors, or they are not motivated enough. They have become siloed. Um, so it's basically what's happening is knowledge cannot be just translated by manuals, SOPs, or training. It needs to be practiced actively. Okay, and somehow we are missing that aspect in incorporating that knowledge which have generated internally as well as externally into a system which is supposed to absorb every knowledge. We are missing that link, and somehow believing that, okay, if I can ask something good question, then maybe something can be understood, and that's how I am outsourcing my thoughts and my understanding. And which is the biggest problem in manufacturing that might happen. You trust something which is coming from a system which cannot explain. You believe someone who has not understood fully, and you accept that decision to do that by a management who is unaware of their consequences. That's the mix of disaster, and something is going to happen somewhere because of that.
Yeah. Thanks for the
Yeah.
kind words. Mr. Nair, would like to have your views. In
Yeah,
short,
so yeah, the closing remark, India is a growing economy. I don't need to explain and go back into all those details. We are at a verge where all industries in each sector is growing, and there's uh, a leap that we need to take technologically. And I really hope that we take the leap as fast as possible to to mitigate the gap between the other two large economies that we stand against. And hopefully, we also have a similar kind of awareness being spread across with respect to cybersecurity, because that's going to be the next major threats that we could be looking upon.
yeah, Mr. Ravi would like to have your views.
I think that for the first time, all kinds of engineering are coming together. We used to kind of look at all streams of engineering very discreetly. So electrical, electronics, software, hardware, and maybe even finance put together is all kind of now considered. It's extremely difficult for one individual to kind of come from all kinds of background, but it's now becoming that much more difficult and also that much more interesting to have that kind of unique skill to solve the problem in manufacturing. It will no longer be a very siloed thing. So I think. That's a very good way to kind of solve the problem by having all the skills together in the table.
Yeah. So, thank you, panelists, for exchanging your valuable thoughts on today's Building the Connected Factories. We hope you enjoyed the session thoroughly. Before wrapping up today's session, we thank our panelists, Mr. Ravi, Mr. Sunil Nair, Mr. Nitin Satnakar, Mr. Ashwani Bhatia, and Mr. Kundan Das. We request our delegates and viewers to stay connected with us. We are on social media handles. OEM Update Magazine is available on Facebook, Twitter, now X, and Instagram. You can also download our app from Google Play App Store. With this, we want to announce the closing of today's session. Please stay tuned for more such sessions. Thank you and goodbye.